Imagine living in a world where a knock on the door at midnight could mean you would never be seen again. No trial, no explanation, no goodbye. A world where even silence could be interpreted as betrayal, and loyalty was measured not by devotion, but by fear. In the Soviet Union of the 20th century, one man held the power to decide who would rise, who would fall, and who would simply vanish from history. His name was Joseph Stalin. To some, he was the builder of a superpower. To millions of others, he was the face of terror itself. This is not a story of distant history or dusty textbooks. This is the story of how blood became a currency, how fear became a tool, and how absolute power reshaped an entire nation. Tonight, we step into the shadow of a man whose image still looms large over history. Born into poverty, ignored by many, underestimated by most, Stalin did not seize power with fiery speeches or heroic battles. He climbed slowly, quietly, patiently, learning that true control is not gained by being loved, but by being feared. As his grip tightened, prisons filled, families were torn apart, and millions learned to lower their voices, even inside their own homes. This documentary is not here to glorify or simplify his rule. It is here to expose the machinery of fear he perfected, to understand how a revolution promising equality turned into a system built on suspicion and blood. By the end of this journey, you will not only know how Stalin ruled, but why his name still echoes as a warning of what happens when power is left without limits. Origins of a tyrant. Joseph Vissarionovich Djugashvili was not born a monster, nor was he born powerful. He entered the world in 1878 in the small Georgian town of Gori, a place marked by poverty, violence, and uncertainty. His father was an alcoholic shoemaker who frequently beat him and his mother. His childhood was shaped by fear long before he ever learned how to wield it. Illness scarred his body, violence hardened his mind, and humiliation planted something darker inside him. From an early age, Stalin learned a brutal lesson. Survival did not belong to the kind or the honest, but to the ruthless and the patient. His mother dreamed of making him a priest and sent him to a religious seminary. But within the walls, meant to teach obedience and faith, Stalin found rebellion. He devoured forbidden books, absorbed revolutionary ideas, and learned how to lie convincingly to authority. The seminary expelled him, but by then, he had already chosen a new belief system, one that rejected God and embraced revolution. It was here that Joseph Djugashvili began transforming into Stalin, a name meaning man of steel. The name was not just symbolic, it was a promise. Unlike other revolutionaries who spoke passionately of freedom and justice, Stalin was quiet. He listened more than he spoke. He observed how people behaved under pressure. He learned how to manipulate loyalty, how to exploit weakness, and how to use secrecy as power. While others dreamed of utopia, Stalin focused on control. He became involved in underground revolutionary activities, organizing strikes, spreading propaganda, and robbing banks to fund the cause. Violence did not disturb him. It was simply a tool. Repeated arrests and exiles to Siberia followed, but Stalin always returned. Each exile hardened him further. He learned endurance, suspicion, and the value of patience. Unlike his peers, who sought recognition, Stalin stayed in the shadows. He was building something invisible: connections, influence, and a reputation for absolute loyalty to the cause. Yet behind that loyalty was ambition. He did not want to change the system. He wanted to own it. By the time the Russian Revolution loomed on the horizon, Stalin was no longer just a revolutionary. He was a survivor shaped by brutality, driven by insecurity, and fueled by a deep need to dominate. The boy who had grown up powerless had learned something vital. Fear could be more effective than love, and soon he would apply that lesson to an entire nation. The rise to the top. When the Russian Revolution erupted in 1917, the world's attention focused on figures like Vladimir Lenin and Leon Trotsky, brilliant speakers, charismatic leaders, symbols of revolutionary fire. Stalin was none of those things. He did not command crowds or inspire poetry. Instead, he worked behind desks, managing details others ignored. While revolutionaries argued about ideology, Stalin learned how power actually functioned. Lenin recognized Stalin's usefulness and appointed him to organizational roles. In 1922, Stalin became General Secretary of the Communist Party, a position many considered boring and administrative. But Stalin understood something others did not. Control the system, and you control the people within it. As General Secretary, he decided who got promoted, who was transferred, and who was quietly removed. Loyalty to Stalin slowly became more important than loyalty to the revolution. When Lenin fell ill, a silent war began. Stalin positioned himself as Lenin's faithful student while secretly undermining rivals. Trotsky, brilliant but arrogant, underestimated him. Others dismissed Stalin as crude and unintelligent. That mistake would cost them everything. After Lenin's death, Stalin skillfully rewrote history, presenting himself as Lenin's true successor. Documents were altered, photographs edited, and narratives reshaped. One by one, Stalin isolated his enemies. Some were expelled from the party. Others were exiled. Trotsky, the revolution's hero, was first removed from power, then from the country, and eventually from life. Stalin did not rush these eliminations. He waited, watched, and struck when resistance was weakest. Power was not seized in a moment, it was absorbed slowly, until it was absolute. By the late 1920s, Stalin stood alone at the top. The revolution that promised collective leadership had become a dictatorship. Yet Stalin did not declare himself a tyrant. He ruled in the name of the people, the party, and socialism. The disguise would make what followed far more deadly. Blood as a tool once power was secured. Stalin turned fear into policy. The 1930s ushered in one of the darkest periods in human history, the Great Purge. No one was safe, not party officials, not military generals, not scientists, not artists. Even those closest to Stalin lived in constant terror. Loyalty offered no protection. In fact, it often made people more visible. The secret police, first known as the NKVD, became the regime's weapon. Arrests took place at night. Families disappeared without explanation. Confessions were extracted through torture. Show trials were staged to create the illusion of justice. But verdicts were decided in advance. People confessed to crimes they did not understand, naming others simply to stop the pain. Fear spread like poison. Neighbors informed on neighbors. Children were taught to report their parents. Silence became survival. A careless word, a joke, even a pause could mean death. Stalin encouraged paranoia because a divided and frightened population could not unite against him. Millions were executed or imprisoned. The exact number may never be known because records were destroyed and lives erased. History itself was people who had once stood beside Stalin were removed from photographs as if they had never existed. Memory became dangerous. Stalin ruled not by inspiring belief, but by exhausting resistance. The Soviet Union became a place where obedience was automatic and fear was constant. Blood was no longer a consequence of power, it was the foundation of it. The Gulag system beyond the executions lay something even more systematic. The Gulag, a vast network of forced labor camps stretched across the Soviet Union. From frozen Siberia to remote deserts, millions were sent. Their political prisoners, intellectuals, peasants, soldiers, and ordinary citizens accused of imaginary crimes. Life in the Gulag was designed to break the human spirit. Prisoners worked in extreme cold, starving, exhausted, and beaten. Food was scarce. Disease was everywhere. Death was routine. Bodies were buried without names. Survival often required betraying others. The camp served two purposes. First, they removed enemies from society. Second, they exploited human suffering for economic gain. Prisoners built canals, mined coal, cut forests, and constructed cities. Stalin's industrial ambitions were powered by slave labor. Families of prisoners were punished as well. Wives were labeled traitors. Children were sent to orphanages and taught to forget their parents. The Gulag did not end at the Camp Getsit, infected every layer of society. And yet, the system was hidden behind propaganda. The outside world saw progress, factories, and victories. The suffering remained buried beneath snow and silence. WAR, paranoia, and legacy World War II brought both destruction and opportunity for Stalin. Millions died as Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union. But victory transformed Stalin into a global power. The war justified further repression. Any criticism could be labeled treason, any failure blamed on enemies. After the war, Stalin grew more paranoid than ever. Doctors, officials, and even friends were suspected of conspiracy. He trusted no one. Power had isolated him completely. When Stalin died in 1953, the nation did not mourn openly. People were afraid to react event to his death. Only later did the truth begin to emerge. The scale of suffering became clear. Stalin had industrialized a nation and defeated an enemy, but at the cost of millions of lives, in a society traumatized by fear. Stalin's legacy is not just history. It is a warning, a reminder that when power goes unchecked, when fear replaces law, and when humanity is sacrificed for control, the damage lasts far beyond one lifetime. Blood may build power, but it never builds peace. As the final chapter of Stalin's life came to an end, the world exhaled a silence heavier than any command he had ever given. He died in his bed, surrounded by power, wealth, and fear yet. The echoes of his reign outlived him by decades. Streets, homes, and families bore scars, invisible to the casual observer. Millions of lives had been erased, rewritten. The monuments he built stood tall, but they were shadowed by the blood that had paved their foundation. Stalin did not rule with love or justice. He ruled with terror, paranoia, and an unyielding hunger for control. And in that hunger, he left a lesson written, not in textbooks, but in the memory of humanity itself. Absolute power, unchecked and unchallenged, devours everything, even those who wield it. The factories, the prisons, the silent forests of Siberia, they all whisper the same warning. When fear becomes law, morality disappears, and history remembers both the oppressor and the cost of his ambition. As we reflect on this dark legacy, we are reminded that power is not measured by conquest or longevity, but by the humanity it preserves or destroys. Stalin's empire of fear may have ended, but the echoes of his reign remain a testament to the terrifying potency of blood and power.